So the question I have for you today is, do toxicologists make good entrepreneurs? And I ask that question because that's the question I had to ask myself when I left my big pharma job in 2014 after AstraZeneca declared that they were closing the site where I was working at Ardley Park. Up until then, I'd had a great career with originally a postdoc in cancer research. I joined ICI, then Zeneca Central Toxicology Laboratory, working with Lewis Smith and the team there. Then I joined Aventis, Sanofi, and finally I was Global Head of Regulatory Safety for AstraZeneca, overseeing all of the non-clinical input into the AstraZeneca drug projects. So it was really quite a shock to find that all this was going to come to an abrupt end. So now what? What was I going to do? Well, I'd always had a relationship with the University of Birmingham. I think many of you remember Kevin Chipman and the master's program there. So could I be a proper academic? Could I actually establish my own lab? Maybe. But secretly, I had always admired people who had their own business. You know that kind of feeling when you're kind of in awe? And I somehow thought that might be telling me that maybe that's something I could do. But could I really do this? Could I really put myself out there and see if people wanted to buy what I had to offer? It really is very exposing. And today I'm going to tell you about my story so that you too can think about whether there is something you might want to do, whether you're a grad student, a PI, whether you're in industry, academia, whether it's something that you might want to think about. And in order to do that, I'm going to use the 3 Ps, which are planning, pragmatism, and people. And I'm going to talk about those 3 things. But before I do, could I just ask you guys, do you think scientists make good entrepreneurs? Show of hands? Ah, excellent. 50-50, right? Interesting, that's great. That's really good. So the first P is planning. And one of my favorite quotes about business planning is that no plan ever survived contact with clients. And that comes from the Prussian general who stated that no war plan ever survives contact with the enemy. Whoever said it, though, it's so true. However, you need plans as evidence of planning, as evidence that you've been through that thought process. What are you going to sell? Who are you going to sell it to? How will they buy it? Who are your competitors? How do you price and how do you cost? And one of the really interesting things I've noticed is that business plans fall into 2 categories. The first one is fulfilling a need. So something you guys already know you need. Bicycle tires that won't puncture, non-stick pans that are actually non-stick, okay? We all know we need these things. But the more interesting value proposition is when a business creates a want and then fulfills it. So a good example, who knew we needed fast food delivery? No one ever said, I really need that, but someone's created the want. Who knew we needed $500 handbags? Someone somewhere has convinced us that we need that, and boy, do we want it, and we see other people with it, and we get it. So those are many, many interesting businesses, create the need and fulfill it. Interesting. So first you need a value proposition at the center, and this is I call it PowerPoint, Ruth's hand drawings. But this is a very early sketch. And let me talk a little bit about planning. So here we see, right in the middle, are you going to sell a goods or a service? Are you fulfilling a want or a need? Who are your clients over on the right-hand side? How are you going to market and what's your pricing like? What's your route to market? On the left-hand side, what are the resources you are going to need to deliver this wonderful thing to people? And the really important bit at the top, hopefully your costs are less than your income. And if they're not, then you have to go again and remap, okay? So this is really, really important. But the bit that's really important, I've put a ring round in the middle, because getting to the heart of your business plan is the pragmatism part of this. And let me tell you a little bit more about pragmatism. How are you going to evaluate your business proposition? So in the very early stages of setting up my company, ApconiX, I went on a business boot camp where I formed a team with my now co-directors, Mike Morton and Richard Knight, both of whom are here at SOT with me. And we got together and we started kicking around ideas for a business. We had lots of help from mentors and previous entrepreneurs. We had lots of different plans like this, as you can see. And we started to develop the ideas. We went on a 6-month boot camp in the evenings and weekends. And at the end of it, we had to do a pitch to the sharks in the tank with other entrepreneurs. And we won. They liked it. We won. We won 6 months free rent in a biohub, which got us started. And that was wonderful. So here's me, Mike and Richard. This was 2013, chatting about setting up a new company. You can see the guys here. And there we are with our Biohub Awards. So that was a wonderful, wonderful start for us. But let's come back to the pragmatism. So the thing that I learned, well, it occurred to me actually, I didn't learn it, it occurred to me on these business boot camps, is that as scientists, we actually make outstanding entrepreneurs. Let me say that again. Scientists make outstanding entrepreneurs because we treat the business plan as a hypothesis to be tested, okay? So, for example, in ApconiX, our early business plan was that people needed assistance in interpreting complex ion channel data, such as Hurg and SIPR, in order to help with cardiovascular risk assessment, because we thought that there was a need. And we set that up as a hypothesis, and we found 20 or 30 potential clients, and we set it up as a value proposition, and we said we're going to speak to at least 20 potential clients. Some of you were in this room, I think you spoke to me way back then. And we said it's a 50% success rate. So if more than 50% said, yes, I would buy that, we're good. If less than 50% said, no, we're not good. We've got it wrong. Hypothesis to be tested. If it's wrong, we reevaluate and we redevelop the hypothesis and we go again. So this is the 3 Ps, people. In a company, it's all about the people. Every problem that comes in is triaged and given to a team, and you're working with your friends and your peers to challenge and peer review. As we do in toxicology, for me, I always say toxicology is a team sport, right? We have to work as a team on everything we do. So as I was preparing for this talk, I was listening, as always, to BBC Radio 4, and also in the people category. There's on every morning at 2 minutes to 8, there's BBC Radio 4 Thought for the Day, and it's sometimes a religious leader, it's sometimes a spiritual leader or a wise person. And this day it was Dr. Chetna Kang, and she was quoting the Hindu saint Rupa Goswami. And as I was writing my talk, I heard this: approach our endeavours, whatever they may be, with enthusiasm, confidence and patience. I really like this because it's so true. You will have setbacks, but you have to be patient, but have that quiet confidence that you as a scientist have your hypothesis and you're testing it, and you will succeed. So I really like that, and it's so applicable to business as it is to many other things. The other thought I wanted to share with you is when I had a little practice of this. I always do this. I always ask people everything. What do you think of this? And I was running through it with my good friend, Professor Wallace, sitting there. And she said, actually, Ruth, you've got 5 Ps because you need to add in to planning, pragmatism, and people is perseverance and persistence in setting up a business. And I think that's really, really very true. As I bring this talk to a close, I want to put it to you that we as scientists make excellent entrepreneurs. I really believe that. I've seen it over and over again. But the closing thought I wanted to leave you with is that being an entrepreneur is not just about making money. It can be about making money, but that's not all about what it is. It's about using your skills to translate the excellent work we do as toxicologists into impact. Because how else are we going to have impact unless it actually gets out there into the real world and off the bench into the real world? So I will put it to you that being an entrepreneur can be about making money, but for us as toxicologists, it's very much about creating a safer and healthier world. Thank you.